going to get started. We're at the top of the hour. So welcome everybody. My name is Norma and welcome to Life Coach University and another Pay It Forward talk. So I'm really honored to be here. I'm always honored to be able to do these types of talks with the Life Coach University, but it's even more special today because not only is this my first Pay It Forward talk, but it's also International Pay It Forward Week. So there's a lot going on, and if you haven't already, I know you registered for this call, but check out what's also happening the rest of this week. There's lots of great coaches coming up with some really incredible talks. So feel free to go over there and sign up. And as always, if you're a returning participant, you know this, but if this is your first time, first of all, a huge welcome. But the Life Coach University is a pay it forward platform. And basically, that means that the only thing we ask of you to participate in these sessions is that you pay it forward with some act of kindness. You know, maybe it's something that you learn here today that you want to share with someone, or just holding a door or smiling at somebody could be enough. It's just putting some more kindness out there in the world. So before we get started, I just want to go over a few logistics with you. I am working on two different screens, so I may look over a little bit every now and again. So it's not a distraction. I'm just trying to keep track of what's going on in our Q&A box. And basically how we're going to spend our next 60 minutes together today is mostly me talking. I'm going to share about 30 minutes of information. I'll introduce myself first, and then I'll jump right into my talk about how to lose weight your way. I would encourage you, though, to post any questions that you have in the Q&A box. If you're not familiar with Zoom, it's really simple. Just hover your mouse around the bottom of your screen if you're on a PC, and a little menu bar will pop up. Same thing on your phone. Just tap the screen. The menu bar will pop up, and you can just select Q&A and type in your question. I'll try to keep my eye on that throughout the session, but I'll likely answer a majority of your questions at the end. I've got lots of time built in for that, so we'll be sure to get everybody's questions answered. Now, the other thing I'll just warn you about, if you're anything like me, you are probably suffering terribly with seasonal allergies this year. So I may have to periodically stop and grab a quick drink. So I hope that's not too distracting. So first, let me introduce myself, because I think my journey really informed my approach to weight loss today. So as I said, my name is Norma Frahn, and I am a life coach for weight loss. And I spent most of my adult life as an overweight woman. I was bouncing from one diet to the next with always the goal of losing weight. But every single attempt, you know, I was convinced that this was the diet that was going to work, but none of them did. And it just went on for years. Now, over the years, I lost a lot of weight. I was really good at following a diet for a while. And then eventually I would quit, and the diet, all the weight that I lost, I'd gain back plus some. Maybe some of you have experienced the same thing. I find that to be a really common scenario for particularly for women. But then on the cusp of my 49th birthday, after I have what I called my crying on the bathroom floor moment, I hired a weight coach. I had no idea what coaching was or what I was getting into, but something deep inside me told me that I had to give this a shot. And I completely surrendered to the process. And this, by the way, was probably one of the best decisions of my life. So I worked through this very foreign coaching process. And about a year later, on my 50th birthday, I was closing in on 100 pounds lost. And better than that, I had reversed type 2 diabetes. I was taking insulin injections and oral medications probably for 15 years at that point. And I had changed so much about how I ate that in and of itself, and some other work that I'll share in a little bit, I was able to reverse that and have been off all of my meds now for closing in on 3 years. So kind of back to the original story, about 6 months later, I actually crossed over 100 pounds lost, and in total, I've lost 117 pounds and dramatically improved my health. and my mindset about my life. So it was really at this point that I knew I had to help other women really experience the transformational power of coaching. It was like having this huge secret that I was just busting to tell somebody because so few people are dealing with weight loss in this manner. So I got my coaching certification, hung out my coaching shingle, and now I have the honor of working with women every day who are changing their lives in ways they never imagined possible. So whenever I tell this story, the first question I get is naturally, well, how did you do it? And my first and foremost response is always, I stopped dieting in the conventional sense, the kind of restrictive dieting that we're all familiar with, where we're basically starving ourselves and or punishing ourselves with exercise and just being constantly in the mindset of thinking about food and what should I eat and what can I eat and what can I eat. And it's just a miserable way to live. But I stopped doing all that. And the one thing that I did differently that has nothing to do with food was I started working on my life and particularly how I thought about myself and my life circumstances. And let me just say that I learned how to navigate my life without using food as a coping mechanism for my life. And when I did that, that's when the magic happened and the weight started coming off. So let's start with why conventional diets just don't work. I believe there's two reasons. There's tons and tons of reasons, but I think the two main reasons that most of us can relate to are these. First, it's each one of us are unique physically, biologically, emotionally. We all have different likes, dislikes, wants, and desires. So we're just all different beings. So the Institute of Integrative Nutrition calls this bio-individuality, and it's the best way I've learned to describe it. As bio-individual humans, it makes sense that there is no one size fits all diet. And when we try to follow one that's out of sync with our bio-individuality, it feels hard and terribly misaligned. I'm sure if you think back to some of the diets that you may have done in the past, you may have had that feeling like it just didn't feel right. Like you were forcing your way through the thing. And that's probably why it was incredibly misaligned with your bio individuality. So, figuring out your uniqueness and building your weight loss around that is one of the first steps in really creating a weight loss process for you or weight loss your way. Now, the second reason why diets don't work is that most only focus on the food you're putting on your plate or not putting on your plate. They usually require you to either restrict or eliminate some foods or entire food groups. And when you're restricting, you're typically operating on sheer willpower. You're white knuckling your way through your day every day. And you might be able to go a few days or maybe even a week or two like this. But eventually, something's going to happen in your life. You're going to have a bad day. Maybe you get a flat tire, or your kids just lose their little minds, and your nervous system is just going to say, that's enough. I can't do this anymore. And before you know it, you're face down in a bag of cookies. Now, I'll just stop right here for a second and say that it's not your fault, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with you if you've repeated what I just described a million times, because I sure did. I can't even tell you how many times that happened to me. And every time it happened, I blamed myself, that there was something wrong with me. But let me assure you, there's absolutely nothing wrong. It goes all the way back to some of the things I was just saying about your bio individuality. And then a little deeper, we'll get into that, some more of the details there. But it's all a very common thing that happens to us. So, what's important to think about here is that restricting your food doesn't solve the real problem. It's only a surface level, kind of a band aid fix. And some people, have been able to lose significant amounts of weight restricting. But like I said before, as was my experience, we gain it all back because you just can't sustain that level of restriction. and you're not solving the real problem. So when you restrict your food, all your life problems are still there, except now you've added a huge dose of hangry and you've topped it off with a heap of miserable diet rules, all for the sake of losing some weight. So just imagine how much different it would be if you worked out all the things in your life that were causing the stress and fed yourself food that you liked and was good for you and your body. And if you can't picture it, let me tell you, that is exactly where the magic happens. And it's here where we actually start to lose weight because we're no longer using food as a coping mechanism. And this place does exist. And it is magical to be the director of your own life and no longer feel like you're at the mercy of it. And that's really what I work on initially with my clients who come to me for weight loss. We start to figure out what the real problems are. What are the things in your life that you're perhaps trying to solve with food or not feel with food? And I'll get into that in just a little bit more. So I really break down my coaching into three areas to help clients figure out their uniqueness, their bio individuality. And the first area that we usually start with, because I think this is one of the most important things, is learning how to normalize food. And I'm going to go through each one of these things in a little more detail in just a minute. But the three things are normalizing food, emotional eating, and self-sabotaging behaviors. And like I said, I believe these areas are the starting points for learning how to lose weight your way, and might I add, for the last time. Now, each one of these items could be an entire class or talk in and of itself. So for the purpose of today, it was really important for me to be able to leave you with some really actionable steps that you could start implementing today. So I've really distilled these three things down to a few key points so that you could do just that. And in future talks, I'm going to take each one of these topics by itself and take a much deeper dive. So just a reminder, come on back to the website and you'll be able to see when the next upcoming talks are, what the topic will be. All right, so normalizing food. Let's talk about this one first. Now, I think, and I love to start this way, I ask my clients to do something that's probably one of the hardest things they'll do. And that is to forget anything they think they know about diets and food rules and losing weight. Just forget it all and open up their mind and be willing to think about this a little bit differently. So, if you're someone that has been dieting for a long time, you've probably picked up some food rules, and you may not even know they're there, some rules that you apply to your eating. And one of the big ones is that we've all, in some way, likely created a good and bad food rule list. And you may have heard this because thankfully it's being talked about a little bit more now. There is no good or bad food, it's all just food. Now, the one little caveat I will add here before I get into this discussion, I'm not talking about nutritional value in terms of food being good or bad. I'm just talking about today how you think about particular foods and how you kind of have categorized them, maybe based on whether or not they are good for you or bad for you relative to weight loss. So when we have all of these kind of good and bad food lists, we sometimes need to take a step back and figure out how to eat again. You know, eating food without guilt or shame because it's on our bad list, and then figuring out how to eat food that you actually enjoy rather than eating diet food because you think you should and kind of suffering through carrot sticks and celery every day for lunch when you'd much rather have a slice of pizza or a burger. Now, granted, yes, like I said before, nutritional value, we're not talking about that. We're just talking about how you categorize your foods and how you think of it. Because what happens is when we think of food as good or bad, when we eat the bad foods, we tend to think of ourselves as being bad. And there is no moral judgment tied to the food that you eat. So if you think about it this way, if you're no longer restricting food or entire food groups, and you truly believe that food is not good or bad, there's really no reason to overeat. I know that, let that one sink in for a minute. If no food is off limits and you're not a good or bad person if you choose to eat something, it's all accessible to you. There's no reason to have things like a cheat day or to beat yourself up because you've overeaten. Just normalizing food from that perspective, like ditching your good food, bad food list, and just starting to experience what it's like to eat food that you actually like without guilt and without shame is a huge monumental shift. And it's such an important step and really kind of getting your mindset around how to do this your way. So to that point, imagine all the brain space and time you get back if you're not thinking about food all the time. There would be no more worrying about cheating or what might be served at this special event, or having someone invite you to lunch in the afternoon at work and worrying about what a diet meal might look like. It all goes away if you allow yourself to remove those labels and just get comfortable eating food. So our relationship with food is truly very deeply ingrained. So the key here is patience. If there's anything I could really make people understand is that, and I'll talk about this more in a minute, there is no such thing as quick fix weight loss, and patience is absolutely required. It's a big experiment in the beginning. So taking the time to unwind this is so important. I know it's scary. I know it's a little confusing, but learning how to trust yourself around food is the most liberating feeling for the person who has made a career out of dieting. All right, let me grab a quick drink and we'll move on to number 2. Let me just take a quick peek at Q&A. All right, fantastic. Yeah, somebody said, wow, food is not good or bad, it's just food. That is massive. I've never thought of that way. Thank you. Yeah, isn't that amazing? Food doesn't have to be good or bad. It's just food. We put the labels on it. So you could think about it from so many different angles, but such a great point of awareness when you can start to embrace that idea a little bit more. All right, let's move on to emotional eating. This is one that I think is a term that's used very loosely, and sometimes we use it against ourselves. So first and foremost, I believe we're all emotional eaters as humans. It's woven into our society and our culture. We celebrate with food, we grieve with food, our holidays are centered around food, and our social events almost always involve food. But this is not the kind of emotional eating I'm referring to. I didn't get to be over 300 pounds once because I had a few extra Christmas cookies or a piece of wedding cake. The emotional eating I'm talking about is the eating that we do to avoid something, or avoid feeling something, or to feel something different, or like I said before, to cope with our lives. So most people identify with the term stress eating or comfort food. And that's the emotional eating I'm talking about. It's when you're eating in response to your life or to distract you from your current circumstances. We all do it. It's a very common thing. And yes, absolutely, in the moment, while you are eating, you may actually feel a little bit better. But almost immediately after you eat, not only does the problem you ate in response to come back full force, but now you've likely added a whole lot of guilt and shame on top of it, making everything feel worse. It's really a vicious cycle, and it's one that personally I am all too familiar with. But through this process that I've gone on in my own journey, I've learned how to recognize it. And that's something that I work really carefully with my clients, is to help them recognize where the emotional eating is in a response to something going on in their lives. So unwinding our emotional eating and learning how to feel our feelings without feeding them is so important to our long-term success. So you can think about it like this. What if you just skipped this part, just totally skipped over dealing with the emotional eating, or what you might want to think of as the real problem that we talked about in the beginning? You might be able to power your way through your emotions and eventually lose weight. I know I did that a bunch of times. But what are you left with? You're left with the same exact life problems, the same exact thinking. You're just in a smaller body. That's the only difference. And except now, you're probably going to live in fear of gaining it all back. So you've added even more stress and more fear into your life. So it's so much better to figure this stuff out on your way down the scale instead of making the mistake that I know I made, and I think so many people have made, is having this little thought that when I lose the weight, I'll have no problems, or when I lose the weight, I'll be happy and none of this will be a problem. Let me just tell you, it is not true. Your life doesn't change because your body got smaller. You have to work on your mind so that you can live in that smaller body and be happy. All right, number 3. This is a biggie too, self-sabotage. And this usually comes in the form of negative self-talk. How we talk to ourselves absolutely matters, and it matters a lot. In fact, I think I'd argue that it's the single most destructive things we can do to ourselves. And you know what? In some cases, our own internal negative self-talk is just plain abusive. I know mine was. We would never, ever talk to another human being the way we talk to ourselves. And recognizing that, first of all, because I truly had no idea of some of the just terrible things I would say to myself until I started to pay attention. So, what's really fascinating about this is that our brains formulate beliefs from thoughts that we think over and over again. So, if you think something enough, regardless of how illogical it might seem to someone else, your brain's going to believe it to be true. So when you're constantly berating yourself, saying mean things to yourself, or just simply not feeling worthy of the things you want in your life, your brain's going to go to work on showing you all of the evidence that that's true. And that's why it's so easy to quit these diets. That's why it starts to feel hard and we can so easily quit because our brain is telling us, look, here you go again. You're about at that couple week mark. Time to quit. This is just too darn hard. You'll never get it. And you just walk away from it. And then we just repeat this cycle over and over. So that's just one example of how destructive our negative self-talk can be. Constantly tearing yourself down because of your weight is probably something you've unconsciously done for a long time. So stopping this pattern is absolutely hard work, but it could be the very thing that finally moves you forward. So when, I think it moves forward because for this reason, when you care about you and you talk kinder to yourself, you take kinder actions for yourself, like not restricting your food or punishing yourself with crazy amounts of exercise because of your weight. The bottom line, you just make better choices that align to your bio individuality. And that's how you start to achieve results. So now that you know the 3 main areas that I like to focus on, normalizing food, emotional eating, and negative self-talk, I think I might be knowing what you're thinking. So what do I do with all this? So as I promised in the beginning, I'm going to share some actionable steps that you can start to implement today. Now, I just want I know you just want to get started and just start losing the weight. But the one thing I'm begging everybody to do who's considering this weight loss your way approach is to slow down. And you need to slow down because, like I said in the beginning, there is no quick fix to weight loss. So here is something I know I can't hear you, but you can repeat after me and then repeat it to yourself. Every day your brain tells you this is not going to work. I no longer practice temporary quick fix diets. I am becoming the person who loses my weight my way. I'll say that one more time. I'm no longer practicing quick fix diets. I'm becoming the person who loses weight my way. Jot that down, and I promise you, if you look at it every day, say it to yourself a few times, slow down, remind yourself of this, you will speed up your entire process. So if you haven't picked up on it, I don't think I've used the word yet, but the first thing to getting started with this type of approach is awareness. You have to understand where you are before you can get started. Kind of like how your GPS finds your current location before it maps out your route. That's exactly what I want you to do around these three key areas that I discussed. It is the starting point. Figuring out where you are today is going to inform your next step. And then when you figure out where you are tomorrow, that will inform the next day's step. So here are some actionable things that you can start building your awareness around your current thoughts and behaviors relative to normalizing food, emotional eating, and negative self-talk. So way back when I started, I was talking about foods not being either good or bad. So, and I mentioned this before, the food that you choose to eat is not a moral determination. Labeling it as good or bad just perpetuates your food guilt and actually leads to overeating. So the first thing that you can do is just to get really aware of what kind of labels you're putting on the foods that you're eating, and figure out if, first of all, if you even like those foods that you're eating. So make a list, get out a piece of paper, after we're done here, and draw a line straight down the middle. One side's good, one side's bad. And then just make your list and do it without any judgment. This is a really important piece. Make any list on your list, write down all of the foods that you currently label as good foods. And then on the other side is your bad list, foods that you label as bad. When you're done, go back and then just circle or highlight the food from either side of that list that you enjoy, that you like, that tastes good to you, that feels good in your body. What typically happens is that people find that they have more of the food on what they originally labeled as the bad list circled or highlighted as the foods they enjoy and like to eat. So here's the tricky part and the challenging part. Once you figure that out, go practice eating those foods and notice what thoughts come up for you. Write those thoughts down and start working on them one at a time. Like, what feelings did you have? Did you feel a little guilty because you were eating something that was originally on your bad list? And kind of capture those thoughts on a piece of paper and then try to objectively look at them. And one of the best things that you can do, and I think I'm going to mention this twice in this final piece here, is whenever you're looking at your thoughts or the things that come up for you when you're doing these exercises, think about this. And this comes from the author Jon Acuff in his book Soundtracks. He says, ask yourself these three things. Is what I'm thinking kind? Is it useful? And is it true? And if you've answered no to any one of those, that's probably not a thought that's going to serve you going forward. So anyway, notice that you're eating for a reason. Notice when you're eating for a reason other than actual hunger. Is there some feeling there that you might be trying to avoid, or some new feeling that you're trying to feel, like the comfort or the relief from stress? Write all that down. One little prompt that might be helpful as you're kind of just collecting your thoughts around food and eating this week is this right here. You can write this sentence down too. I tend to eat blank when I feel blank. This will really give you some awareness after you've collected a little bit of data on your list and you've collected your thoughts. You might see a pattern, and this little prompt might help you get thinking about the things you tend to go for, or the things you tend to crave when you have a particular feeling. So I know for me, when I feel stressed, and it still happens, by the way, when I feel stressed, I will sometimes just find myself in the kitchen looking for something, and it's usually something like chips or bread or some kind of a processed carb. That's what my body craves when I feel that stress. So, what I've come to learn is that when I feel stress, if I catch it first, I can remind myself this is just the stress wanting me to eat these foods. This isn't me being hungry. So, maybe I can find a different way to manage through this stress. So, I think the key message here is that feelings really can't hurt you. You can think of them just as a vibration in your body, and it's okay to feel angry and frustrated and hurt. Those are normal human emotions. But trying to stuff them down and not feel them with food, that's just masking the real problem. And that's also a very good signal when you catch yourself doing that. Just like hit your imaginary pause button and just think, what's really going on here? What am I really hungry for? And this is going to help you figure out where you are today in terms of how you're thinking about food and using food as a way to cope with your life. All right. And then pay attention to how you talk to yourself, your inner dialogue. Um, and again, I mentioned it just a minute ago. John Acuff's guidance in the book Soundtracks is to continually ask yourself, is it kind? Is it helpful? Is it true? And when I did this, and I do this quite often, it really helps ground me. It kind of brings things into perspective. So whenever you catch a nasty soundtrack running through your head, just stop and ask yourself those questions and see if you can find a thought that's a little bit better, that actually is a little kinder, might even be helpful, and is definitely true. All right. So here's where I just want to offer you just a bit of caution to notice the difference between simple and easy. So everything that I talked about on the surface might sound simple, like picking a new thought to think, but it's not easy. So try not to gaslight yourself with more negative self talk. Like, geez, all you have to do is just think a new thought. What is wrong with you? Why are you making this so hard for yourself? We tend to do this too as we start this work. It's a very common thing that happens. But remember, it's a simple thing on the surface to just say change a thought, but it's not easy. And I recognize that, and I want you to recognize that in yourselves as you start doing this work, and be kind to yourself. Give yourself some grace. This might be the first time you've ever really paid attention to the thoughts that you think, and especially the thoughts that you think about yourself. These are old thoughts and they've been on repeat for a reason. You've thought them for a long time, over and over again, and they might even feel like really, really true. But they don't, so, they're not going to change overnight as much as we want them to. This is the real work of it. It's just continually reminding yourself that no, this is not true. And do that enough, and you'll start to kind of rewire your brain. And the day that it happens, you will be amazed. You will catch it immediately when your brain goes to that new thought first in that same circumstance. It's an amazing thing. So, this is going to require you to choose your words carefully and deliberately. I think one of the places that, particularly, I think, as we're working on weight loss, and oftentimes body image comes with weight loss. When we look in the mirror, the first thing we do is tear ourselves down. This is where those careful word choices and very deliberate word choices are kind of come in really, really handy to help changing how you not only see yourself, but how you think about yourself. And you're probably not going to believe your new thoughts right away. That's okay. That's perfectly normal. And it's going to seem like a pointless exercise at first, but stick with it. And remember, you are in the long game. So there is no such thing as temporary quick fix diets. And this work is absolutely key to losing your weight for the last time. So I'm going to wrap this up and then get to our questions. Doing these few steps for just a couple of weeks is really going to help you hone in on your awareness around the areas of your life that you can start focusing on. Because remember, the goal isn't about figuring out necessarily what food to put on our plate that's going to help us lose weight. The goal is to figure out the right problem to be solving, and it's usually not the food. So you may notice that patterns start to emerge, and that's fantastic news because that's going to give you a really clear starting point to start working on those areas. And the last thing I'd leave you with is to watch out for the when then thinking. And I talked a little bit about this in the beginning. When you think or say things like, when I lose weight, then I'll, if you fill in the blank, you're really kind of putting your life on hold. And this approach never works. And frankly, it's the reason why most people gain their weight back that they lost on a traditional diet, because they haven't done the work, like I said before, all the way down the scale. They waited to the end thinking that the weight loss was just going to magically make their lives perfect. So again, they're still just the same person they were and they're just in a smaller body. They have the same problems, they have the same life circumstances. We're just in a smaller body now. So I wanted to repeat that because I just think that's just so important to remember, that this work needs to be done all the way down the scale. You can't wait till the end to do that. So just again, like I said, the work I talked about today will teach you over time how to live your life while you're losing weight. So, and your life should be woven into the process. That's why I call it weight loss your way. I couldn't possibly tell somebody what food to eat and in what quantity and how often. That's all back to our individuality, and weaving our lives into that is so important. So we're going to practice this all the way down the scale. And that's truly the magic of weight loss your way. All right, so let me move my screen so I can look at you directly while I'm answering some questions. Okay. All right, so anonymous attendee says, I find I'm tired, so I eat sugar. Then I feel bad that I ate it, and then stop for a day, and then go back to sugar the next day. I hate the cycle. Oh my goodness, yes. I think so many people can relate to this one. There's a lot going on here. So, and I'm going to try not to go too far down the path of biologically what happens when we eat sugar, but I think most of us know that sugar is a quick hit pick me up. So when you're tired, I know for me, when I'm in the office, it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. My go-to used to be the vending machine. Go get a candy bar or something. Boy, you'll get some energy and you'll power through the day. But just like you described here, Anonymous, I felt so bad and so guilty for doing it. And I was tired again, literally in like an hour, because you crash very quickly when you do those quick sugar hits. So I was still tired. I felt terrible about myself. And then I just repeated the cycle the next day. So this one is tricky because there are some addictive nature or qualities to sugar, and there's some habit here as well. So one of the best things that I can suggest, very tactical kind of thing, drink more water. Oftentimes when we are feeling tired, it triggers hunger, or if we have this habit of reaching for sugar, it will certainly trigger that. If you're well hydrated, your body is less likely to send up hunger signals. So drinking more water throughout your day is just a very tactical thing that you can do, and just see if it kind of impacts that craving for sugar when you do get tired. And again, this goes back to some of the awareness. This is a great point that, or a great thing to put down on your list, that you know this about yourself. When you're tired, you want sugar and you feel bad after you eat it. Now you know that. When you feel tired, you can make a more intentional decision. You may still decide to eat the sugar, but you can also decide that if I choose to do it, I'm not going to feel bad because I did it. And then you just try again tomorrow, and you just kind of like level up your thinking little by little. And you might get to a place where, you know what, you just decide that bad feeling not worth having. The sugar's not worth having because I don't need to feel bad about myself because I ate sugar. And maybe you choose something else. All right, next one. I have someone, anonymous attendee. I'm a film editor, and when I'm close to a deadline, I end up eating all my meals at the keyboard. Yep. By the end of the project, I see how much I've gained, and all the crumbs in the keyboard is evidence of that too. Absolutely. How do I change what I eat how do I change what I eat when I can change? I think you mean when I can't change certain things in my life. I need, I need to, I need to do this work to pay the bills. Got it. Okay. Yes. So this is what I mean about taking your life into consideration. Now, certainly eating your meals at the keyboard, that might be something that you want to focus on a little bit, and maybe just find one meal that you could step away from that keyboard for a few minutes. Because what happens when we're eating, we'll call it distractive, whether it's trying to work or watching TV or reading a book while you're eating, you don't pay any attention really to what's going in your mouth and how it's feeling in your body. Oftentimes, when we do that, we're eating more than our body needs, but we don't even recognize it because we're totally distracted from the meal itself. Now, I completely understand if there's deadlines and time might not be the best to step away, but I would encourage you to try it at least for one meal. And just ask yourself how much work is really not going to get done if I step away and just go eat, take care of myself, and come back. It's really being open and willing to try something a little bit different, even though your brain's telling you that you must sit here and be glued to your keyboard until this deadline is met. It's part of like learning how to take care of yourself, and a little bit along the lines of that negative self-talk is that you have a whole lot more control than you think you do. So I would encourage you just to try it, even if it's just for one meal, see how it feels, and do that for a couple of days. And once it feels a little more relaxed and you realize that maybe stepping away just to eat is not interfering that much, you might want to try to add another meal. Small baby steps, whatever you feel comfortable doing, and then leveling it up when you're ready. Yep, there's your correction. I see it now on the line. Okay. Anonymous eater. All right. I mean, anonymous eater. Geez, anonymous attendee. I definitely eat for a pick me up or to feel good when I'm bored. Thank you for giving me the chance to address this. Yeah. You know what? That's funny. Boredom is a big one for me too. It still is. It's not the problem that it used to be. But when I started doing this work, I thought that I only ate when I was like really sad or really happy, but I discovered that boredom, particularly on the weekends when I wasn't working and had those deadlines and those type of things, that I had trouble. It wasn't so much that I was bored, but it was that I learned about myself that when I wasn't doing something that my brain thought was productive, like just sitting on the couch and reading a book, my brain was telling me this isn't good enough. You should be doing something else. And that immediately drove me to the kitchen. And that's when I ate. And it took a while to find that and unwind it. But I would suggest you think a little bit about, is it really bored? Or is there something, niggling back there in your brain, when you are taking time just to rest and relax? So I would tell myself I was resting and relaxing, but I was a ball of nerves because I didn't believe that I should rest or relax. It was that I should be doing something every minute. And it took a while to unwind that one. But boredom is a big one. And again, you know that about yourself. And now you can give yourself the opportunity to pause when you feel the boredom coming on. I know this is going to typically lead me to eat. Maybe I can plan to have something different when I feel that boredom coming on and I decide to eat. and then have some foods picked out in advance ahead of time that you would enjoy eating at that time, and then step away. You made the decision to allow it, go enjoy them, and then get back on with your life. And it's really just kind of like segmenting and making decisions a little in advance to address the boredom before it happens. So this is all really fantastic stuff that you're finding, um, patterns really before you've dug in even deep and done any of the deep work. This is great. All right, someone said earlier you said make a career of dieting, and I realized that I've done that. Yeah, yeah, and you said that's horrible. Just be careful. This is a little perfect example of those sneaky little negative self-talk things that come in. Try not to be too judgmental of yourself if you've made this career of dieting. I certainly had, and so many people have. I do spend so much time thinking about food, and when somebody invites me out, I actually um, feel afraid. I'm afraid that they will notice what I eat. They'll notice if I don't eat, and then they'll think badly about me. How do I deal with the fear of what others think about me? This is a big one. And I can so relate to this. One of the things I hated most in my life was the occasional meal that I had to share with coworkers for dinners and events and that type of thing, because I had all of these same fears. It's a tricky one, and it's going to take some time to work out. But first of all, again, you have the awareness, you know it's there. So doing the work I talked about initially about normalizing food, there's probably some stuff in here that you're worried about what they're going to think about, like you said, the amount, the food that you eat, what food you're actually eating. It's because you have some very um, strong labels on those foods, probably. Like for instance, the big one is going out for nachos. This was my thing. In my mind, that they was I was a fat woman, and a fat woman does not eat nachos. So when we'd go out to Mexican, and my company loved to do that, that's all I thought about. They're all looking at me. They're all seeing this fat woman eat nachos, and they're all thinking the same thing. I just know it. And it made the time that I was there miserable. But here's the thing. Nobody cares. Nobody's really truly paying attention at that level. But when you can normalize those foods for yourself and take those labels off, it quiets some of those thoughts about what others are thinking about it, because you believe they're bad foods to eat. The your brain is telling you everybody thinks that, but that's not necessarily true. And like I said, one of the biggest aha moments I had was that, you know what, they were never really paying attention ever. They didn't care. They were thinking about themselves. And who knows, some of them were probably thinking the same things I was thinking. So it's really a process to work through. But if you start by trying to normalize the food itself and being truly okay with the things that you're eating, it will quiet some of those thoughts or fears about what other people are thinking. I hope that helped. Okay. Let's see. Attendee says this has been really useful. Good. I'm glad. I never really thought about having to focus on my life while losing the weight. I've been so focused on the food, the calories, the scale. Sometimes I think I actually want the diet, counting calories, food prep, because it gives me something to do, something to feel bored. Sometimes I feel so bored with my life. Oh, I'm so glad this came up. This is really super common, especially if you're someone who's been dieting for a long time. First of all, we've kind of trained our brains that, and society has done this too a little bit, that we have to be dieting all the time. It's just what we do. So just recognizing that you're focusing so much on the food is such a good thing, and the calories and the scale. I can give you a little secret. I lost 117 pounds. I never counted a calorie. I never tracked a point. I deleted all of the apps from my phone that tracked calories and points and told me how much food I was allowed to eat, because of the exercise that I did. I got rid of it all. And I started focusing on the things in my life that were not working for me. And the things that I was trying to, and just much like this anonymous attendee wrote, I was using my dieting and my food as a way to avoid my life and avoid the things I didn't like about my life. Food doesn't have to be entertaining all the time. And it kind of goes back to that normalizing thing. It's just food. And we don't live our lives by the scale. That's that's like another whole course I'll do it later on how to think about the scale. But the wanting to diet and finding the next shiny object is all really appealing and attracting to a brain that's trying to not deal with something else. And for me, it was my self-worth. I was trying not to deal with my self-worth and telling myself that by doing all this crazy dieting, I was fixing my self-worth. But that wasn't the case at all. So I'm so glad you recognized that and you brought this up, because it is something to really kind of explore a little bit and maybe do a little bit of journaling about, what is it about your life maybe that you might be trying to manage with food, or this need to diet and be in some process. And then, you know what, if you're going to be in a process and you need something for your brain to grab onto, let's get in a process that actually is going to help you move forward and actually serves you. So this is a great comment. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Someone said down here on the bottom, one of my last comments here. Oh my goodness, I've never thought about that. I think I don't feel like I deserve to rest. Yeah, that is such a huge one. And you know what? 4 years later, I'm still have to remind myself that it's okay to sit down and just read a book or do nothing. So yeah, that's a good one. Resting is a big deal. And I think it's something that a lot of us use food to take a break. That was a big one for me. In fact, probably my top reason why I was eating outside of being hungry. It was always for relief and because my body just needed a rest. And I trained myself to go right to the food. But learning to sit with it and be okay with resting, I'll be totally honest, for me, was harder to do than to not eat in those moments. It was harder just to sit there and rest, because when you take away the food in any situation and you just sit with your feelings, you're just raw and sitting there with your feelings. And that's the part about it, maybe being simple but not easy. That's when the feelings all come up and you get the opportunity to process them, recognize that they're there, and decide what you're going to do with them. All right, we have got just a few minutes left. I think we have got through all the questions. Let me just double check. Oh, no, a couple more here. Let's see. Thank you for this talk, Norma. I had no idea my food stuff was so deeper than just trying to diet. It's much more emotional. Yeah, very much so. This was a big aha for me too. It's amazing what you can pinpoint when you kind of take the food, no pun intended, but take the food off the table and just see what's underneath all of that with your emotions, for sure. Let's see. Anonymous says, I eat separately from my family because they eat all fast, quick foods and large meals with me. They know that I'm trying to lose weight, but sometimes it gets too lonely and I give up and join them in their meals. Then I go and force myself to throw up. I'm so angry that my family doesn't support me. If they ate healthy foods, it would be easier for me. Okay, so this one, first of all, I give you tons of credit for sharing this very, very brave and very vulnerable to do that. And that you're making some attempts here to eat your meals outside of these, fast, quick food type large meals. But here's where the work gets a little bit hard. I totally understand that it can be lonely, especially if you are the only one in your household that is trying to address their weight. it was the same for me for several times. I mean, gosh, the process of weight loss in and of itself can be lonely and it can be very scary. So I want to acknowledge that right out of the gate. But here's the truth of it, and I hope this doesn't sound too harsh, but your family doesn't have to be on board with you for you to decide what things you want to do to change your life. In fact, they can't do it for you, and their support, while certainly it would feel wonderful, isn't necessary. And I know that, like I said, I know that might sound a little bit harsh, but it's actually true, because we can't make another person do or say or feel anything. We can only control how we respond to them and to the things that they say to us. That's all we can control. So I would encourage you to just think about that a little bit. Um, and really, I'm not a doctor, and I don't profess to be one, but or a therapist either. I am a coach, and my coach antenna is up here and telling you, I really want you to pay attention to that behavior of wanting to make yourself be sick after you eat. I just worry about you. That is not something that is going to help you or serve you, and it could physically harm you. So that's all I worry about. So please, if you feel like you need to talk with somebody about that, I'd be happy to give you some recommendations. Um, it's it's really dangerous behavior to do, and I would want you to be safe. That's why I say it. But to work on just the specifics of really needing that family support, you can always talk to them and tell them what you need. But again, you can't make them do it. So part of this work is really just taking, like, kind of grabbing it by the shoulders and taking your process in your hands and doing what works for you, because you love yourself enough to do this and you're willing to do it without requiring the support of another person. I hope that makes sense. All right. We have a couple of minutes. Any last questions? I think we are coming to the end of these. Okay. All right. So, oops, maybe there's one more coming in. Yeah. Okay. So last one I'll address, and then we will end at the top of the hour. Someone is saying, if I don't eat, then I will drink or grab my phone. My hands seem to always have to be doing something. Yeah, this is very normal, especially in this day and age. There is just instant gratification available to us at every turn. So, and this is, again, this is the part where I say it sounds simple, but it's not easy. All of these things that you described, the eating, grab a drink, grab your phone, your hands have to be busy. That's all forms of something that we call buffering. And that you need to do something to keep your mind busy so you don't have to think about whatever it is that is pushing you to eat, or whatever feeling it is that you're trying to not feel or to manufacture. So it's just by keeping ourselves busy all the time, we don't have to deal with the hard stuff in our life. So maybe this is just something to try. If you find this happening where you feel like this urge to, whether it's eat, drink, grab your phone, do something, just allow yourself to stop and just give yourself 2 minutes, just 2 minutes, just to sit there. And no matter how uncomfortable, because it's going to feel like you're going to crawl out of your skin for in those 2 minutes, just feel it so you know what it feels like, and keep doing that every time. Just give yourself 2 minutes, because usually an urge to eat, an urge to drink, an urge to grab something will pass in about 90 seconds if you don't respond to it. So sit there. I always tell my clients just to sit with it for 2 minutes and see how you feel afterwards. Just take deep breaths. And when the 2 minutes are up, then you can make the decision. Just give yourself those 2 minutes to make an intentional decision versus a reactive decision. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Such great questions. I really appreciate all of the participation. And I will be back next month. And what I will be doing next month, like I mentioned before, is breaking down each one of those three categories one at a time. So we're going to start with normalizing food next time, and we'll go much, much deeper. And I'll share much more information about how to do that, what that means, what it looks like, and all of that good stuff. So thank you again for attending. I really look forward to talking with you again, and have a beautiful week. And don't forget to pay it forward. It's International Pay It Forward Week. We pay it forward all the time at Life Coach University, but on this week in particular, it's super important. All right, friends, we will see you soon. Have a wonderful afternoon or evening.